The stagecoach creaked and groaned to a halt, its wheels settling in the dust like it had finally given up. Rose Mathers clutched her satchel to her chest, heart pounding, fingers damp with sweat inside her worn gloves. The driver tipped his hat but didn't help her down. Folks didn't linger in towns like this, not unless they had to. Her boots hit the ground with a dull thud. It was mid-morning, sun already high and hot, glaring off the bleached sign that read Dry Creek, Montana Territory. A wind stirred the dust, carried the smell of horse sweat and wood smoke. It tangled in her hair, whipped her skirt around her legs, and made the hem of her traveling coat flap like a loose saddlecloth. She looked around. One saloon, one livery, one mercantile with a sagging porch and a creaky rocking chair. The sheriff's office stood half leaning against itself, and across from it, a squat post office with a splintered bench. But no one was waiting for her. Her throat tightened. She had written 3 letters. His name was Derek Bishop, a rancher, widowed, respectable. That's what the papers said. That's what the preacher back home told her when he'd handed her the reply with Bishop's handwriting across the page. He had promised to meet her in Dry Creek, promised to take her to his land, to marry her proper, to give her a new start, a place where no one whispered when she entered a room, where her size didn't matter and her past didn't weigh her down like a sack of river stones. But now, the only soul watching her was a man leaning against a fence post, arms crossed, hat low over his eyes. A gray gelding stood beside him, reins loose in his hand. He had a jaw like a grinding stone and shoulders that filled out his coat without trying. She tried to ignore the heat crawling up her neck. Men like that didn't look twice at women like her, not unless they were laughing. Still, he didn't laugh, just watched. Calm, curious. She picked up her bag, wedding dress folded inside it like some sad flag of surrender. Her skirts rustled as she crossed to the bench outside the post office and sat, trying not to let her body spill too wide across the planks. The man crossed the street a minute later. "You, Rose Mathers?" His voice was slow and gravelly, like boots on hard earth. She looked up. He wasn't young, maybe mid-30s. His face was weathered, but not unkind, just used. "I am," she said, chin lifting. He nodded once. "You were meant to marry Derek Bishop." "Yes," she said, then softer. "Is he not here?" The man looked away for a moment. "He left town this morning, sold off what was left of his cattle, and lit out." Her chest sank. "What?" "Didn't say why, but folks say he changed his mind." The words landed like a slap. She tried to swallow, but her mouth had gone dry. "I'm sorry," he added. "It ain't right what he did." "No," she said, voice flat. "It ain't." The man looked like he wanted to say something else, but didn't. Instead, he offered a hand. "Name's Cole Hartley. I run the Hartley place just over the ridge." She didn't take his hand, not yet. "You a friend of Mr. Bishop?" "No," he said, "our neighbor." Not the same thing. She liked that answer. "I can ride out to the widow's boarding house," she said after a pause. "There was mention of one in the letters." "There is," Cole said, "but she's full. Miners came through last week and paid up front." She stared at the street. A mule clopped past, dragging a broken cart behind it. Flies buzzed. A dog barked from somewhere behind the livery. "You're welcome to stay at my place," Cole said finally. "It ain't much, but I got a spare cot in the storage room. You'll be safe there, just till you figure out your next move." She looked at him, eyes narrowed. "You offering charity, Mr. Hartley?" "No, ma'am, offering decency, that's all." He met her gaze, steady and plain-spoken. No heat, no leer. Just a man trying to do what was right. Though there was something else behind those eyes, too. Something she couldn't quite name. After a long pause, she stood. "All right, just for a night or two." He nodded, then whistled low. His gelding stepped forward. He mounted with practiced ease, then reached a hand down to her. She hesitated only a second before grasping his forearm. His hand was rough and warm. She swung up behind him, skirt riding up more than she liked. She felt the strength in his back, the tension in his body when she settled in, arms around his waist. They didn't speak as he turned the horse westward toward the hills, but as they rode out of town, every whisper behind them stuck to her like burrs. She wasn't what Bishop ordered, but she was here, and Cole Hartley hadn't looked away. The ride to Cole Hartley's ranch was long and mostly silent. The horse's hooves thudded against the hard-packed earth, each step sounding louder than it should have. Rose sat behind him, hands clasped around his waist, trying not to lean too close, trying not to notice the way his back muscles shifted beneath his shirt with every movement. The wind carried the smell of pine and leather. Hawks circled overhead. Fences stretched like scars across the hillsides. This wasn't just a ride. It was the start of something she couldn't name yet, something uncertain, something dangerous. By the time they crested the last ridge, the sun was sinking behind the hills, spilling gold across the valley like it had been poured from heaven. His homestead came into view, small, weather-worn, practical. A crooked fence, a lone apple tree near the barn, smoke curling from the chimney like a welcome home she wasn't sure she deserved. Cole swung off the horse and offered her a hand again. She took it, trying not to show the strain in her knees as she dismounted. Her legs were sore from the ride, and embarrassment prickled across her skin like burrs. Water pumps around the back, he said, loosening the saddle straps. Rooms inside to the right. It's not much. I'm not here for silk sheets, she muttered. He gave a dry smile. Didn't figure you were. Inside, the house smelled like wood smoke and coffee grounds. The floors were worn smooth, the walls bare but clean. The spare room was barely wide enough for the narrow cot, a chipped wash basin, and a single chair with a frayed quilt tossed over it. Still, it was warm, safe. Not what she'd been promised, but more than she had. I'll fix up something for supper, Cole said, already heading for the kitchen. She sat on the cot, hands resting on the satchel that held her wedding dress. She didn't open it. Couldn't bear to. Instead, she unpinned her hair, letting the dark strands fall around her face, and stared at the wall until the smell of stew called her back to herself. They ate by lantern light. Neither of them spoke for a while, save the scrape of spoons and the soft clink of tin cups. You from Kansas, right? He asked eventually. Dodge, she said. Born there. Worked as a seamstress the last 7 years. You good with a needle? Better with numbers, she replied, surprising herself. But nobody wants a bookkeeper who can't fit behind a counter. The words hung there. Cole didn't look up. You don't have to explain yourself. No, she said, but I'm tired of not being seen. He finally looked at her then. Really looked. Not with hunger. Not with mockery. Just that quiet, steady look that somehow saw everything without stripping it bare. You've been seen plenty, he said, just not by the right men. She stared at him. Is that what you think this is? I came all this way to find the right man? Did you? I came to get away, she snapped. From stares, from whispers, from my mother's voice in my head, telling me I'd die alone because no man wants a woman who casts a wide shadow. The silence after that wasn't awkward, it was loaded, like gunpowder in the air, waiting for a spark. Cole leaned back in his chair. The lantern cast his face in amber and shadow. I had a wife once. She was thin as a fence rail and twice as cold. Rose raised an eyebrow. She didn't want this life. Left one morning without a word. Took the good dishes and my dog. That almost made her smile. Sorry about the dog, she said. He grinned then, just a little. Me too. More silence, this time less sharp. I'm not staying long, she said quietly. Just until I figure out what comes next. I didn't ask you to stay, he replied. She stood, clutching her empty bowl. Good, then we're even. But as she turned toward the wash basin, she felt it. His eyes on her, lingering. Not just out of curiosity, not pity, something else. Desire? No, couldn't be. Her hands trembled as she scrubbed the bowl. That kind of attention didn't happen for women like her. Not in real life. Not in a Western story where mail-order brides were supposed to be sweet, silent, and small. She wasn't sweet. She wasn't silent. And she damn sure wasn't small. Do you regret it? Cole asked from behind her. Coming here? She turned slowly. The lantern light caught the curve of her cheek, the fire in her eyes. I regret believing a man's word meant something. His gaze didn't flinch. Mine still does. She walked past him then, brushing his arm as she went. Electricity sparked up her side, but she didn't look back. "Good night, Mr. Hartley." "Night, Miss Mathers." She closed the bedroom door behind her with a soft click. Her heart beat hard in her chest. Fast, uneasy, like something had shifted between them, and neither one was ready to admit it. But out on the porch, Cole stared into the dark, hands gripping the railing tight. She wasn't what he'd been expecting, and that unsettled him more than anything ever had. The scent of coffee pulled Cole from sleep. Rich, dark, and steady, like something from another life. For a moment, he thought it was a dream. Then he remembered the girl. The porch floor creaked beneath his boots as he stepped inside. Light streamed through the kitchen window, catching specks of dust in the air. Rose stood at the stove back to him, sleeves rolled up, dark hair braided down her back like a heavy rope. Her hips swayed slightly as she reached for the tin coffee pot. She moved with a kind of grace he hadn't expected. She was barefoot. He cleared his throat and she turned. Her face froze for just a moment before she smiled. Not a warm smile. Not yet, but not a cold one either. "Hope you don't mind," she said. Coffee was calling. "Smells better than mine ever did," Cole muttered, reaching for a cup. They stood in silence a beat too long. The fire popped in the stove. "You always up this early?" he asked, sipping. "I worked in a boarding house once. Cook started before the roosters." She shrugged. "I got used to moving before folks had the chance to notice me. That last part hung between them like smoke. I noticed," he said. Rose glanced at him, surprised. "Not sure that's a comfort." Cole leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I ain't most men." She looked at him fully now. Her eyes were a deep brown, steady and unreadable. "I'm starting to believe that." They sat at the small table, the silence stretching thin again, but not sharp. Just unfamiliar. Two strangers, trying not to feel like something more, was forming in the quiet. "I'll earn my keep," Rose said suddenly. "I can cook, mend, clean." "I didn't bring you here for that," Cole interrupted. She raised an eyebrow. "Then why?" He hesitated. "Didn't sit right, leaving you there, that's all." Her gaze didn't soften, but it shifted. "You're a decent man, Cole Hartley. But don't confuse pity with kindness." He smirked. "I know the difference." Outside, a rooster crowed. The sun crept up over the hills, painting the fields in gold and copper. "I'll help with the animals today," she said, standing. "If I'm not gone by the end of the week, I'll start paying rent." He watched her move through the kitchen, measured, strong, self-contained, like someone who'd spent her whole life waiting to be treated like a person instead of a problem. As she passed him, their arms brushed, just for a second. But his breath caught. Hers did too. This Western story wasn't shaping up the way either of them expected. And somewhere deep in Cole's gut, a truth he didn't want to name stirred. She wasn't a burden. She was a storm. And storms change everything. The bell above the mercantile door jingled when Rose stepped inside, arms full with Cole's shopping list. Salt, flour, lamp oil, and oats. It was supposed to be a simple trip, but silence met her like a slap. Three men leaned against the counter, mugs in hand, mid-laugh. Their talk died as soon as she entered. Behind them, a young boy stood on a crate, restocking tins of peaches. But his eyes darted toward her and froze. Rose felt it before she saw it. Something on the post near the door. Something with her name on it. She'd turned slowly. There it was, a poster, pinned with a dull nail, her face drawn in charcoal, unflattering, mocking. Below it, scrawled in crude black ink, "Mail order whale, half the woman, twice the price." Her chest locked up. Heat flushed across her cheeks, ears, neck. For a second, the room tilted. She heard one of the men chuckle into his cup. She tore the paper down, hands shaking. "I wouldn't take it personal," one of the men said, a smirk tugging at his lip. "We just didn't think she was your type, Hartley." Rose turned. Cole stood in the doorway, shadow cast long across the store. His jaw was tight, his eyes darker than she'd ever seen. "Who did this?" he asked, voice flat. Nobody spoke. "Who did this?" The boy on the crate mumbled, "It was Travis. Said it was just for laughs." Cole turned on his heel and stormed out. Rose followed fast, but not fast enough. By the time she reached the saloon, the doors had already swung closed behind him. Inside, voices rose, then a crash. Wood on wood, a grunt, shouting. She shoved her way in and found Cole with his fist buried in a man's collar, shoving him up against the bar. You think this is funny? Cole hissed. It was a joke, damn it, Travis barked, spitting blood. She's a guest under my roof. You think I won't defend that? Travis struggled. She ain't what you ordered. Cole hit him again. A bottle shattered behind them. Someone shouted for the sheriff. Rose stood frozen in the door, fists clenched at her sides. Everyone turned to look at her. Not with pity this time, but with something closer to awe. She walked straight through the saloon, chin high, shoulders square, grabbed Cole by the wrist and yanked. Enough, she whispered. He looked at her, chest heaving, face bruised and red. He don't get to talk about you that way, he said. I've had worse, Mr. Hartley. Not while I'm standing, he growled. Later, back at the ranch, he stood at the basin, washing blood from his knuckles. She handed him a cloth. Thank you, she said, voice quiet. He looked at her. I didn't do it for thanks. I know, she said. They stood in silence again. Not as strangers. Not anymore. And somewhere deep inside her, something stirred. Not safety, not pride. Something scarier. Hope. The morning after the fight, the barn was quiet except for the rhythmic brushing of horsehair and the soft scrape of hooves shifting on dirt. Rose stood beside the oldest mare, Daisy, her thick braid tucked into her collar and her sleeves rolled high. She moved slow, steady, the way animals liked. Cole watched from the doorway, leaning against the post. He hadn't meant to stare, but there was something about her calm, the way she didn't flinch anymore when he looked at her, the way her hands, soft and scarred, moved like they belonged there. You handle horses before? He asked. She didn't turn. My father ran cattle and broke horses near Wichita. I was his shadow. My brother said I was more barn cat than girl. Cole stepped inside. You miss it? Sometimes, she said, before it all fell apart. He didn't push. Folks who talked like that usually weren't ready to explain the rest. I've got fence to mend today, he said. You want a quiet day? You can take the books inside, see if the ranch still has legs. She finally looked at him. You trust me with that? He shrugged. I trust the way you look at problems. Calm, calculated. That's rare. She wiped her hands on her apron. All right, but I charge a steep fee. He smiled. What's the going rate? Hot coffee, maybe some fresh tobacco for my nerves. Cole chuckled. Done. Later, the ledger sat open on the kitchen table. The numbers were bad. Worse than she'd expected. The cattle drive last spring barely covered the feed bill. Cole wasn't just riding through hardship, he was drowning in it. He came in near dusk, dirt-streaked and tired. She didn't wait to be asked. You're leaking coin through rusted hinges and lazy stock hands, she said. If I were running this outfit, I'd fire the lot and start with 2 good hands and a strong mule. He dropped his hat on the table. I ain't good at asking for help. Good thing I wasn't waiting for permission. He poured water into a basin, splashed his face, then looked at her through dripping hair. My wife hated it here, he said softly. Called it a prison made of fence wire and cow shit. Rose looked up. Why'd she stay? She didn't. Took a stage one spring and didn't write back. Silence, deep, waited. I'm not her, Rose said, voice low. I know, Cole replied. That's the damn problem. She froze. His eyes met hers. I keep waiting for you to break, he said. To run, but you just dig in. Because I've already been broken, she said. Something shifted then, not loud, not sudden, just a shared understanding between two people who'd both been left behind. She turned back to the books. He watched her for a long time, and in the quiet breath between numbers and dusk, they weren't strangers anymore. They were survivors in a Western story no one else had dared to write. The attic was hotter than a branding pit by midday. Dust hung in the air like breath that couldn't quite leave. Rose stood beneath the low rafters, arms wrapped around a wooden crate as she carried it down the ladder into the parlor. Cole had mentioned needing to clear the old space above the barn. What he hadn't mentioned was what he'd left up there. She opened the crate and found a stack of letters, yellowed and brittle, tied with rawhide string. A thin blanket of dried lavender clung to the bottom. Someone had once tried to keep them safe. She recognized the handwriting, fine, slanted, and angry. Who were they to? She asked when Cole came in from outside, straw clinging to his sleeves. He paused in the doorway, eyes dropping to the letters in her lap. My wife, he said after a long beat. They were hers. You kept them? Cole pulled off his gloves. Didn't mean to, just never went through all her things. Rose untied the bundle slowly. The first letter was folded neatly. The ink had bled a little, but the words still stung sharp. Cole, I hate the way you smell like horses. I hate the sound of your boots. I hate that I ever believed this place could be home. She swallowed hard. She didn't write these for remembering, Rose whispered. Cole sat down across from her. His jaw flexed, like he wanted to say something and didn't know how. She married me out of spite, he said. Her father wanted to punish her. So he sent her west. I thought it might work out. Rose tucked the letters back inside the crate. Sometimes love's not what starts a marriage, but it should be what keeps it. You ever been in love? He asked. She hesitated. I thought I was, once. He waited. I was 17. He said he liked girls with meat on their bones, said it like it was a kindness, then told everyone in town I begged him to touch me, that I was grateful for his attention. Cole's fists clenched. She noticed, but didn't mention it. I wrote letters too, Rose said. After he married someone else, I never sent them. She stood, crossed the room, and pulled a small oilskin packet from the lining of her satchel. Inside 10 folded pages. Cole didn't reach for them, didn't ask, just sat quiet while she stared at them, her fingers trembling at the edges. I told him everything, she said, how much I hated myself, how I tried to starve the fat off me, how I wanted him to say I was enough. Cole's voice was low. What would you say to him now? She looked him dead in the eyes. I'd say I was always more than enough. He just didn't have the guts to hold it. Silence followed, not the kind that stung, the kind that healed. Outside, a thunderhead was building in the distance. And inside, something in both of them had shifted. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of something real. The church bell rang out across Dry Creek, calling sinners and saints alike. Rose stood just outside the whitewashed building, smoothing the front of her dress. She hadn't worn it since Kansas. A soft blue number with stitched cuffs and tiny pearl buttons. It fit tighter now. Or maybe she just noticed more. I don't have to go, she whispered. Cole adjusted the collar of his clean shirt. You do. She looked at him. You've got every right to stand in that building as anyone else, he said. Maybe more. She nodded once, tucked her hand under his arm, and walked beside him down the church aisle. Whispers trailed them like smoke from a brush fire. They sat in the back pew. The preacher's voice droned on, reading from Revelation. But the real sermon played out in stolen glances and elbow nudges. When it ended, folks filed out into the yard, pies and casseroles already lined on the long tables for the after-service potluck. Rose stood with her hands clasped in front of her, trying to keep her breathing steady. A group of women stood near the table, bonnets tight, mouths tighter. One of them, Mrs. Connolly, leaned in close to her friend, then turned with a sweet smile that didn't touch her eyes. Well, bless your heart, Miss Mathers, she said, voice loud and syrupy. I must say you're braver than most, showing up here after that little misunderstanding with Mr. Bishop. Rose forced a polite nod. Mrs. Connolly's eyes flicked to her plate. Don't worry, dear. There's plenty to go around, even for bigger appetites. Cole set down his coffee cup hard. That's enough. The whole yard went quiet. Mrs. Connolly turned, startled. I beg your pardon. I said that's enough, he repeated, stepping beside Rose. You speak to her again like she's some sideshow animal, and I'll see to it you don't get invited back to this church. Ever. The preacher cleared his throat nervously. Now, Cole, She's not what folks expected, Cole continued. But she's stronger than any man I've ever hired. Smarter, too. And I'd wager not a soul here could survive what she has with half her grace. Rose stared at him, heart pounding. He wasn't just standing up for her. He was standing with her. The moment stretched too long. Then a voice piped up from the far end of the table. "Try the apple cobbler, Miss Mathers," an old ranch wife said. "Might be the only honest thing here." A few chuckles broke the tension. A few more folks nodded toward her. And just like that, the spell cracked. Later, when the sun dipped low and the food was picked clean, Cole and Rose walked the hill trail back toward the ranch. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "Yes, I did." She stopped walking. "Why?" Cole turned to face her. "Because this town already decided who you were. I'm just trying to remind them they don't get the last word." Her lips parted, something caught between breath and confession. But she only said, "Well, thank you." And they kept walking, shoulder to shoulder, just close enough for their hands to brush, but not quite touch. The smell of singed hair filled the air. Cattle bawled as they were driven into the holding pen, their hooves kicking up clouds of dust that clung to everything: shirts, skin, lungs. The sun beat down like judgment, and branding season had officially begun on Hartley land. Rose stood near the chuck wagon, apron tied high, sleeves rolled, ladling stew into bowls for the half-dozen cowhands Cole had hired for the week. Her arms ached. Her dress stuck to her back, and a smear of flour painted her cheek. But she hadn't felt this useful in years. That's when he arrived. Travis McKinley, leaning against the rail fence, like he owned the whole damn valley. Hat low, toothpick dancing at the corner of his mouth, eyes trailing the curve of Rose's waist like she was part of the herd. "You the one they brought in to fatten us up?" he said, tipping his hat with a smirk. Rose didn't look up. "If you don't like the food, you're welcome to eat dirt." Laughter rang out from the other men, but Travis just chuckled. "Feisty. I like that." Cole walked past at that moment, wiping sweat from his brow. He didn't say a word, but his jaw had gone tight as a cinch rope. Later that afternoon, Rose carried a basket of clean rags to the barn. She was halfway through stacking them when she felt it. Someone behind her. "Travis, don't sneak up on people," she said, not turning. "Just came to say thanks for the stew," he drawled. She turned. "You're welcome." But he didn't leave. "You know," he said, stepping closer, "a woman like you's wasted on a man like Cole. You got too much real in you. He can't handle that." She stepped back. "You don't know a thing about him." He moved again, closing the distance. "Maybe not, but I can tell when a woman needs something deeper." Before he could touch her, Cole was there, grabbing Travis by the collar and slamming him into the barn wall. "She told you no," Cole growled. "I was just talking. You talk again, and I'll rip that silver tongue out of your mouth." They stared at each other for a breath too long. Then Travis spat at Cole's boots and stormed out. Rose stood frozen, heart thudding in her throat. Cole turned to her slowly, breathing heavy. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded. He looked away. "I should have known he'd try something. I shouldn't have let you out here alone." "I'm not made of glass, Cole." He looked at her again. And this time his eyes weren't hard. They were afraid for her. "No," he said. "You're made of fire, and that scares men like him." For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she reached up and touched his arm. Soft, brief, enough to say she wasn't mad. And more than that, maybe she wasn't immune to him anymore. But nothing more passed between them. Not yet. Still, as they walked back toward the house, shoulder to shoulder, the air between them crackled with something wild and dangerous, like lightning waiting to strike. The creek behind the Hartley ranch twisted through a stretch of cottonwoods like a secret too good to share. Most of the hands didn't come this far. Too rocky, too quiet. But Rose had found it on her second week and claimed it as her own. That evening, she stepped into the water, barefoot, letting the cool current swirl around her ankles. Her skirts were pulled up and tied at the waist, damp fabric clinging to her thighs as she moved deeper, knee-high now, sun sinking low behind the hills. Cole stood just out of sight, one hand resting on the bark of a tree. He hadn't meant to follow her. Told himself he was just out checking fence lines. But truth had a way of cutting through cowboy lies, and the truth was, he just needed to see her. Not doing chores, not fighting back tears, just being. She closed her eyes, raised her face to the last of the sunlight. Water trickled past her like time itself, and something in her posture softened. For once, her shoulders didn't carry anything but her own weight. I used to sneak off to a creek like this back in Kansas, she said, not looking his way. Wait until no one was watching. Slip off my shoes, feel the water, breathe. Cole stepped closer, boots crunching lightly on the grass. You miss it? She nodded slowly. I miss who I thought I could be. He didn't say anything. Let the breeze fill the silence. I was always told my body was the problem, she said, that I had to change to earn love, to be small enough, quiet enough, worthy enough. He took another step forward. They were wrong. She turned to him. Her dress clung to her legs, her hair loose and curling with the humidity, her eyes searching his face. You ever feel like this world don't have room for people like us? She asked. Like we're too loud, too scarred, too much? He nodded. I think that's what makes us right for each other. Her breath caught. It wasn't a line, not flattery, just truth. Simple, plain, and spoken the way it would be in any good Western story. I was 13 when my teacher told me I'd never marry, she said softly. Said I'd grow up bitter, maybe mean, if I didn't start trying harder to change. Cole's hands curled into fists. And did you? No, she said, but I tried to disappear for a long time. You didn't disappear, he said. You just got real quiet. Now you're rising. She stared at him, really looked. For once, she didn't flinch beneath a man's gaze. You see me, don't you? She whispered. I do. She stepped out of the water, wet skirts dragging, face flushed. Her body didn't hide, didn't apologize, and Cole didn't look away. He stepped aside to give her room, but their arms brushed. Heat surged through them both like a live wire. She smiled, and he did too. This wasn't the end of the story. This was the moment all good Western stories lived for. The part right before something beautiful broke loose. The storm rolled in slow, all growl and warning, rattling windows and whispering through the eaves of the house. Cole had been quiet since sunset, his words fewer than usual, his footsteps heavier. Rose found him sitting on the floor near the cold hearth, shoulders hunched, a bottle untouched beside him. He wasn't drunk, just lost somewhere too far for whiskey to reach. She paused in the doorway, holding a folded blanket. You all right? He didn't answer. She stepped closer, crouched beside him. Cole, I saw her last night, he said, voice like splintered wood. Rose froze. In my dream. He nodded. She was sitting right here. Same dress she wore when she left. Her back was to me and I called her name. Rose eased down beside him, not touching, just near. She didn't turn around, he went on, but I knew it was her. I could feel the cold. She always carried it with her, even in summer. Rose looked at the bottle. You ever talk about her? Not much to say, he replied. We were strangers pretending. She hated this land, hated the quiet, hated me for choosing it over her. He rubbed his eyes, the lines at the corners deeper in the firelight. She once told me the wind out here sounded like a warning, he said. Said it reminded her she didn't belong. She was right, Rose said softly. He looked at her, surprised. This land don't let people belong easy, she continued. It makes you bleed for it. And most folks ain't strong enough to stay. You are, he said without hesitation. Their eyes locked. The air shifted. You ever wonder, she asked, why some people are drawn to broken things? He blinked. What do you mean? You took me in when no one else would. You fight for me when I don't ask you to. And now you're sitting here, talking about ghosts you've never let loose. Cole swallowed hard. Maybe I'm broken too, he said. Maybe, she replied, but broken things still hold water if you know where the cracks are. Silence stretched. Then, slowly, she unfolded the blanket and draped it over his shoulders. Her fingers brushed the back of his neck. He didn't flinch. She started to rise. Stay, he said quietly. She sat again, this time leaning her shoulder against his. Not fully touching, just enough. They stared into the dark fireplace like it might spark back to life if they held still long enough. Outside, thunder grumbled over the hills. Inside, neither of them spoke another word. But Cole turned his hand palm up beside hers, not grabbing, not assuming, just offering. And after a breath, Rose slid her fingers into his. Not lovers, not yet, but no longer alone in the quiet. This was still a Western story, with all its dust and scars and silence, but tonight, they wrote a softer chapter in it, one ghost quieter than the night before. The morning after the storm, the house was still. Cole stood at the sink, rolling up his sleeves as sunlight filtered through the lace-curtained window. Damp curls clung to the back of his neck. Rose tried not to stare, but failed. She sat at the kitchen table, a letter folded in front of her, frayed at the corners, creased a dozen times, but unopened. Cole turned to grab the coffee pot and caught her gaze. She looked away too fast. Yours? He asked, nodding toward the letter. She gave a slow nod. I wrote it years ago, to my mother. He poured 2 cups and brought one to her, setting it down close. Their fingers brushed. His calloused skin against hers, neither of them pulled back right away. I never sent it, she added, but I can't seem to throw it away either. He saw knees bumping hers beneath the table. She didn't move, didn't want to. I told her I forgave her, Rose said. But I didn't. Cole didn't interrupt, just listened. She made me believe I had to earn love by disappearing, shrinking myself to be accepted. She said no man would ever want someone who took up space. Cole's jaw flexed. She was wrong. Rose looked at him, eyes searching. She also said I'd have to settle, that if anyone came along, I should take what I could get, that I wasn't built for fairy tales. Cole's voice dropped low. You think I'm a man you're settling for? Their eyes locked. She swallowed hard. No, I think you're a man who doesn't even know what he does to me. The tension in the air thickened, humming like a plucked string. Cole leaned in slightly, close enough for her to feel the heat of his body, close enough to smell leather, smoke, and something uniquely him. What do I do to you? He asked, her breath hitched. Her pulse pounded against her throat like it wanted out. You make me feel like I'm not invisible anymore, she whispered, like I don't have to hide who I am. He reached for the letter, paused just short of touching it. You want me to read it? He asked. No, she said, voice shaking it. Not yet. He nodded once and leaned back, but not far. He looked at her the way a man might look at a locked door he's dying to open. Just so you know, he said, voice low and rough, there's not a thing about you I want smaller. A beat passed, then another. I think I should start breakfast, Rose said, standing too quickly. She turned toward the stove, but his voice stopped her. I don't pity you, Rose. I want you. She froze. He let the words sit there, unapologetic. Heavy, true. She didn't look back. Not yet. But her hands trembled as she cracked eggs into the pan. Outside, the world carried on, unchanged. But inside, the story had shifted, and the fire between them was no longer just beneath the surface. It was rising. Smoke rose in the distance, thin, black, twisting into the sky like a warning too late. Cole spotted it first. He dropped the feed sack in the barn and sprinted for the ridge. Rose wasn't far behind. By the time they reached the fence line, a fire had already leapt through the dry grass. Wind pushed it east, fast and wild, straight toward the lower pasture. Lightning must have struck during the night, Cole muttered. Damn wind's feeding it. What do we do? Rose asked, breath sharp. I need to ride out, cut the southern fence. If it traps the herd, they'll die. I'll get the animals loaded, she said. You'll need water, bandanas, rope, already packed. He turned to go, then hesitated. Stay near the wagon. If it jumps the road, you run. You hear me? I'm not leaving without you, she said. He didn't argue, but the look he gave her held more than fear. It held something unspoken, something they hadn't dared name. Then he mounted up and was gone, dust and smoke swallowing him whole. Rose worked fast, sweat running down her spine. She led horses into the corral, loaded crates onto the buckboard, tied feed bags and water skins in place. By the time she looked up again, the fire had crested the ridge, and Cole was nowhere in sight. Her gut twisted. She waited. 10 minutes. 20. Then, she grabbed a soaked bandana, tied it over her mouth, and headed for the ridge. Smoke bit her eyes. Heat kissed her face like punishment. She stumbled over cracked earth and rocks until she found the broken fence. And beyond it, a riderless horse. Ooh! No answer. She ran harder now, heart in her throat. Then movement near the base of the slope. A collapsed figure. She nearly screamed. "Ah!" He'd stirred, coughing. "I'm fine," he rasped. "Horse spooked. Threw me." She dropped to her knees beside him, hands searching his arms, his chest, his face. "You're not fine," she whispered. "I will be." "No, you won't," she said, voice trembling. "You don't get to ride off and leave me behind. Not anymore." Their eyes met through the smoke. He reached up and touched her cheek. "I wasn't trying to leave." She leaned into his touch for just a second, just enough. "Come on," she said. "I'm not strong enough to carry you." "Yes, you are," he said. "You've carried me since the day you stepped off that damn stagecoach." She smiled through the tears. "Then quit making it harder." Together, they climbed back toward the road, smoke thick behind them. The fire raged, but in that moment, it couldn't touch the fire building between them. Later, after water, after safety, after breath, he would take her hand in the dark and say something reckless. But not yet. For now, they just sat side by side on the wagon bench, shoulders touching, their clothes damp with sweat and soot. And without a word, they knew. This wasn't just survival, it was becoming. 3 days after the fire, the land was still smoldering, but the ranch had been spared. Cole and the crew were worn raw, their skins sun-baked and blistered, but the cattle were alive, and so were they. Rose moved slower now, not from exhaustion, but from something heavier. Because that night, a letter arrived. It came on horseback, delivered by a dust-covered rider who tipped his hat, handed over the envelope, and said nothing. Rose took it with shaking hands. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. She didn't open it, not right away. She slipped it into her apron and went to the well, where Cole was drawing water. "You all right?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "I think my past just caught up," she said softly. He looked at her, really looked. "Want to talk about it?" She shook her head. "Not yet. But I need you to believe something. Anything. I didn't come here running from shame. I came here because it was the first time anyone ever looked at me like I wasn't a problem to be solved." Cole's throat tightened, but he only nodded. That night, she opened the letter beneath the lantern glow. Her fingers trembled with every word. "You think distance makes you safe? You think marrying a stranger hides what you did? You left before I could finish what I started. But I haven't forgotten you, Rosalie. I still remember how you begged." Her breath caught. The name at the bottom made her skin crawl. Lyle Hartman. Cole found her sitting outside near the barn, the letter crushed in her hand. He crouched beside her. "Tell me." She handed it to him. He read it twice, face darkening with each line. "Who is he?" Cole asked. "He was the preacher's son," she said. "Everyone in town thought he was a good boy. I let him walk me home one night. He said things I believed. Then he locked the door behind him." Cole's fists balled at his sides. "I screamed," she said, voice barely a whisper. "No one came. When I told the sheriff, he said Lyle would never do that. That I must have wanted it." "God damn," Cole whispered. "I left 2 days later. Took every coin I had and bought a one-way ticket west." She looked at him now, tears streaking her cheeks. "You still want me, Cole? After this?" He stood. "Get inside. Pack a bag." "What?" "He found you once," he said. "He might try again, but I swear to God, he won't touch you. Not while I'm breathing. Cole, I need you to trust me." She nodded, but her knees wobbled as she stood. He caught her. They stood there, too close, hearts pounding. "Do you think less of me?" she whispered. He leaned in, voice rough. I've never wanted you more. They didn't kiss, not yet, but the promise hung in the air like thunder behind the mountains. This wasn't just a Western story anymore. It had become something else, something dangerous, and something worth fighting for. Cole checked his revolver twice that morning, not because he forgot how, but because something in his gut twisted the way it always had before a fight. The last time he'd felt this coiled up, he'd buried a man for stealing cattle. This time the stakes were heavier. Rose. He found her in the barn, brushing down one of the mares. Her sleeves were rolled and sweat shined along her collarbone. But her hand moved steady, calm even, like she'd already decided something. You sure you want to stay? He asked. She looked at him, eyes hard. I ran once, I'm not doing it again. He stepped closer, close enough to smell the hay in her hair, the saddle soap on her skin. This man, he's the kind that don't scare easy. Neither am I, she said. For a second, he forgot how to breathe. Still, he said, voice low, you don't need to be brave. Not for me. I'm not being brave for you, she said. I'm being brave for me. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. She didn't pull away. You've changed since you got here, he said. No, she replied. I finally stopped apologizing. He leaned in, lips inches from hers, heat passing between them like lightning before a strike. But before either of them could move, the sound of hooves, slow, purposeful, a single rider coming up the main road. Cole pulled back, face darkening. That him? Rose stepped to the barn door. One look was all it took. Lyle Hartman, riding like he owned the dirt beneath his horse. Clean clothes, smug face, eyes locked on the house like it was already his. Rose's hands balled into fists. Cole saw it too. He's alone. For now, she said. Lyle stopped outside the gate and dismounted with theatrical slowness. He walked toward the house, boots crunching gravel. Cole met him halfway, hand resting on the butt of his pistol. Lyle smirked. You must be the rancher. You must be the mistake. Funny, Lyle said. I came to take back what's mine. Rose isn't yours. Lyle's smile faltered. She was. Cole didn't flinch. You don't own people here. This ain't the kind of Western story where the villain wins. Lyle's eyes narrowed. You threatening me, Hartley? No, I'm promising. Behind them, Rose stepped into the open. She wore a plain dress, her boots dusty, her shoulders square. You don't get to touch me again, she said. You don't get to look at me again. Lyle stared, trying to laugh, but something in her voice rattled him. You've got no idea who I am, he said. I do, she replied. You're nothing, and you always were. Silence. Then Cole spoke, calm as ever. You get on that horse and ride, right now. Lyle hesitated, then he saw it. Rose's hand on the shotgun beside the barn door. Steady, ready. He backed away slow, mounted up, and spit on the ground before turning his horse. As he rode off, Cole exhaled. You were shaking, he said gently. So was he, she answered. And together they watched the past ride out of Dry Creek. For now, it pressed down heavier, thicker, like the day itself didn't want to let go. The air between them buzzed, tight and silent, like the string of a drawn bow. Rose leaned against the porch post, arms folded beneath her chest, her curves soft in the amber light. She wasn't hiding them tonight. Not from him. Cole stood across from her, one boot braced on the step, hat in hand, sweat still clinging to the hollow of his throat. His shirt hung loose, top buttons undone, skin bronze and dusted. Neither of them spoke. They didn't have to. I keep thinking he's going to come back, she said finally, her voice low and flat. He might, Cole replied, stepping closer. But I'll be right here. Their eyes locked, something passed between them, hot and old and hungry. You don't flinch when I raise my voice, she said. You don't flinch when I don't say anything at all. She took a slow breath. That's the trouble, ain't it? He moved again, 2 steps. Close now, close enough that her breath hitched. What trouble? The kind where I want you to touch me so bad, I can barely stand it. His jaw flexed. She didn't blink. Say something, Cole. If I touch you, he said, voice dark and slow, I won't be able to stop. Then maybe you shouldn't start. Their hands found the porch rail beside each other, inches apart. Heat radiating between their fingers like fire through fence wire. She brushed his pinky with hers, once, twice. Then her whole hand slid across, warm, calloused, trembling. He closed his over hers. She swallowed hard. I've been waiting my whole life for a man to look at me like you do. How's that? Like I ain't too much. He stepped in again, crowding her against the post. You're not too much, Rose, he said. You're everything. Their faces hovered inches apart now. She tilted her chin, lips parted, breath mingling with his. He reached up, hand ghosting along her jaw, then down her neck, hovering over the line of her collarbone. She arched just slightly into it, then stopped herself. I'm not asking you to fix me, she said. He nodded, voice barely a whisper. I just want to hold you. Not for what happened. Not because you need it. Just because I want to. Her breath trembled. You sure you can stop there? No, he said. Not even a little. She smiled, wide and wicked and soft. Then she stepped away. Not far, but enough. Then maybe we wait, she whispered. Let it burn a little longer. He chuckled, low and rough, like gravel. I'm already burning. She turned toward the door, glancing back over her shoulder, eyes gleaming. Good. And she disappeared inside. Cole stood there, hands still hot from hers, chest heaving with everything he didn't do. The space between their hands had closed tonight, but the fire? The fire was still building. In this Western story, the kind full of dust, scars, and aching want was far from over. Dawn cracked over Dry Creek like a match strike, sharp and golden. Cole was already saddled up, reins in hand, dust swirling around his boots. He'd heard word that Lyle had stopped at the general store late the night before, asking too many questions. Folks said he didn't ride out alone. Rose stepped onto the porch just as Cole swung into the saddle. Where are you going? She asked. He looked down at her, torn in ways he couldn't show. I need to make sure he's not circling back. I'll be gone a day, maybe two. She stepped down into the yard, her boots crunching gravel, her robe still tied at the waist. Don't go like this. Like what? Like you ain't sure if I'll be here when you get back. Cole's hand tightened on the reins. I spent years being someone's burden, Rose said. Now I want to be someone's reason. You're the first man who ever saw me and didn't flinch. You think I could ever forget you? He asked. You think I could ride away and not take you with me in every damn heartbeat? She moved closer, and this one time, he didn't pull back. She grabbed his shirt, dragged him down off the saddle. Their lips met in a crash, hot, desperate, like time owed them something and they were collecting. His hands gripped her waist, pulling her into him like he'd been starved for years. Her fingers tangled in his hair, mouth parting beneath his, a gasp caught between need and relief. They broke apart just long enough to breathe. I'm not afraid anymore, she whispered. Good, he said, pressing his forehead to hers, because I'm done pretending I don't love you. She smiled through tears, then say it. I love you, he said. I love the way you walk, the way you fight, the way you stare down ghosts like they should be scared of you. Say it again, he grinned. I love you. She kissed him again, softer this time, slower, and it said everything they hadn't dared admit. But eventually she stepped back, fixing his collar. You'll come back? I'll burn the whole prairie down if it means I get to. Then ride, cowboy. And he did. Heart thundering, saddle creaking, the Western story they'd written burning in his blood. 2 days later, he returned, battered, bruised, but alive. Lyle had been run out of the county by a few good men with bad tempers and long memories. Rose met Cole at the barn door. No words this time. Just arms around necks, lips on foreheads, fingers laced like roots in dry soil. They didn't need a preacher or a paper to know what they had. They'd survived the fire, the past, the shame, and the silence. What came next was theirs. Together, they sat on the porch as the sun dipped low, her head on his shoulder, his thumb tracing lazy circles on her knee. He whispered, You still think this ain't a fairy tale? She grinned, No, Cole, it's better. Because fairy tales are clean. This was raw, real, earned, and it would last. If this story hit you right in the heart, don't write off just yet. Tap that like button if you felt the fire between Rose and Cole. Subscribe to Saddlehorn Stories for more raw, real, and unforgettable Western tales. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done if Lyle came riding back into town? Would you stand your ground like Rose? Or load up and vanish like the dust? This ain't just a Western story. It's a ride you don't want to miss. Saddle up and stay a while.